Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to yet another edition of Burnt Coverage. You keep watching, so we keep doing it. Week 8, we're doing wide receivers right now. So, anything witty to say?
No.
Anything informative?
Probably not.
All right. This has been another segment of Burnt Coverage. Tune in next week. No, I'm just kidding.
Joel.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Joel.
I'm Curtis.
Like you don't know that. Like you care.
Yeah, like you care.
You all know us anyway.
I'm Jim Bob Cooter.
He's Jim Bob. I'm Cooter.
So I'm swinging low, sweet chariot on these wide receivers. Last week paid off for me. Michael Floyd coasted me in with his 50-yard touchdown performance, which is all you need from a 3,200 guy. So what the heck? I'm gonna keep it rolling, and I'm not picking a wide receiver that's over 3,200 for the segment.
What?
Yeah, believe it or not. And I'm gonna start with a $3,200 guy right off the bat, and that's Stevie Johnson. If you remember Stevie Johnson, he was a #1 receiver, a miscast in Buffalo. Had some really good games. Probably most remembered for a huge drop that he had that would have beat the Patriots. But now he has floated around a little bit. He's ended up in San Diego. He was a season-long darling. A lot of people were a sleeper pick. Hasn't really happened yet. He does have 2 touchdowns, but then he was injured. He hasn't really broken out for any big games. He's had a couple 50, 60-yard games, which is serviceable for his price. He's $3,200 in DraftKings, $5,900 in FanDuel. But here we go. Phillip Rivers is the NFL's leading passer, yards, completions, and attempts, which is most important for Stevie Johnson. And with no running game, we're going to see all the receivers for San Diego get a couple more targets than probably they should. Even though Keenan Allen is a target monster, Stevie Johnson's actually done pretty well. And in fact, last week, his first week back, he had 8 targets. He had 8 targets with 4 catches for 50 yards. It's not a bad completion percentage, but Stevie Johnson actually is not their possession receiver. Keenan Allen is. They use Stevie Johnson a lot to stretch the field. And, Malcolm Floyd is their go-deep guy. Stevie Johnson runs a lot of routes that are about 10 to 15 yards. So he's getting a little bit more difficult passes than Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen gets like the 5-yard catches a lot of times. Stevie Johnson playing against Baltimore this week. Baltimore is the, as we discussed almost every week now, Baltimore is the worst team against the pass. And this week we will probably have no Gates again. Sprained MCL for some reason. Gates doesn't want to get an MRI. He's just like, I probably have a sprained MCL, whatever. Hopefully that's all it is, but
He'll just take something over the counter for it.
Yeah, I'm sure it won't be anything that's illegal. But it looks like he's not going to play this week. Now, Ladarius Green is a great fill-in, and he's not quite to Gates' ability or at least trust factor with Rivers, but he certainly is getting the job done. He had a good week last week. Picked him in my tight end segment. But I think Stevie Johnson now, with a lot of targets, and was really brought in to be the third option in this offense. And with Gates gone, I think he could be the second option, especially this week. And he's a near minimum price, the $3,200 and $5,900 in FanDuel. He's been averaging all year when he's been healthy 4 to 5 catches a game already. So that's 5 points in your PPR with the 50 yards. That's 10 points. So he's already tripling just in his basement. His average, he's already tripling his price in DraftKings. The only thing about him is that he was battling a hamstring injury. However, last week he came away clear of that. I expect the same thing this week. So for a low-end play, if you are playing a lot of high-end whatever's running back, wide receiver, there's a couple of decent high-end tight ends this week too. And you need to play a low-end guy. I think Stevie Johnson could be a good choice.
No, I like Stevie Johnson. Like off camera, I've been very high on Stevie Johnson all year long, but I think that he's not what I thought he was going to be. I don't think he's the perfect complement to Keenan Allen in that offense. I think he's got a high ceiling but a low floor. I think he's maybe had one 100 game receiving game this year, but he did have a little bit of rust last week, but he still was able to pull in those catches out of the 8 targets I think he had. But no, it's a good value play. You are much higher on the San Diego offense this week than I am. The Gates casualty, the Gates being out, Ladarius Green is an adequate fill-in, but I don't think that they'd like the tight end to be a major player in that offense, but I think they just have better options, and Philip Rivers likes to find the better option in matchups. So no, it's a good value play.
I think it's and once again, sometimes it's not because I love a guy's supreme talent. This isn't that case, like it's not a Julio Jones type pick. It's a volume pick. If Philip Rivers is going to throw 50 times, he's going to throw maybe 20 times to Keenan Allen, maybe 10 times to Woodhead, and then maybe 8 times to Ladarius Green, and then the rest to Stevie Johnson, Malcolm Floyd.
Yeah, I think the best you get. I think what you can expect or hope for from Stevie Johnson is 5 for 75. And that pays for him in and of itself. But what you're really hoping for is to get the touchdown in there, and that's what will put you into the money.
Yeah, and that's what happened last week. I'm gonna combo this real quick, shit on the wall thing with Michael Floyd. I like him again this week. It's the same deal. He's 3,500 this week. He got a bump because he had a decent week last week. But it's the same thing, a high-powered passing offense, low price, the attention's elsewhere, and so these guys have an opportunity.
Yes, they play in the NFL. They have an opportunity. Brilliant insight.
Oh, like you have someone better.
Brilliant insight once again, Jim Bob. I do have somebody better. I have the best wide receiver in the NFL. That is DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins going against the Tennessee Titans this week. DeAndre Hopkins is the NFL's leading receiver, averaging 111 yards a game. Last week he had his worst game of the season against Miami. He only caught 6 for 50 with 0 touchdowns, but I think that was the anomaly game. They went 3 and out their first 6 drives and were down 40 points at halftime. So yes, Tennessee does have the second best pass defense in the NFL, but in this case, I think great receiver trumps overachieving defense. So home games this season, he is averaging 9 catches, 123 yards, and 1 touchdown. Production like that doesn't come cheap, however, so you're going to pay for him at $8,700 on DraftKings, $9,000 on FanDuel, but you want the best, you got to pay for the best.
I'm going to have to say Joel's worst pick on the couch so far.
What?
DeAndre Hopkins.
The leading receiver in the NFL is my worst pick.
Yep, and I'll break it down for you here.
Break it down, Hammer.
Well, what we saw last week wasn't an aberration. Teams are figuring out that DeAndre Hopkins is pretty good, so they are focusing a lot of their attention on him, which is allowing a lot lesser talented receivers such as Nate Washington to do well. And we always have the specter of Cecil Shorts that could come back at any minute too. The problem for DeAndre Hopkins is he is the weapon now. And it's okay if you're the running back, but it's not okay if you're the only wide receiver. And here's why. First of all, you're playing a Tennessee defense that has been very good against wide receivers. In fact, I know that Julio Jones did scrape out a touchdown late to win the game, but he was held in check the whole game. And that's Julio Jones. I don't see Brian Hoyer doing he couldn't get it to DeAndre Hopkins last week against a very suspect defense. He's not going to be able to do it this week. And for the price, there's just so many guys that you could play, even mid-range guys that would be better values than this. I think you're putting a lot on the line. You're really just crossing your fingers and hoping that
the best wide receiver in the game has an average game.
No,
I'm crossing my fingers for that.
You're crossing your finger. Well, average game isn't going to pay his price. You're crossing your fingers and hoping that Tennessee, for some reason, decides to fall off the map on covering wide receivers, and they're one of the best in the league. And also that they just think that they're going to go to somebody else besides DeAndre Hopkins, but they don't have Arian Foster anymore.
But they didn't have Arian Foster the first 5 weeks of the season. That's when DeAndre Hopkins lit the world on fire.
He's going to be double teamed. He's going to be triple teamed.
He's been double and triple teamed the first 6 weeks of the season. They only had Arian Foster for 2 weeks.
This is an awful.
And last week Arian Foster had a great game. That's why DeAndre Hopkins didn't have to have the great game. But now that he is the only option on their offense, we're going back to the first month of the season when he was blowing everybody away. Doesn't matter who they cover. Who they put on the cover?
I mean, I'd rather put my money on Antonio Brown. I'd rather put my money on.
DeAndre Hopkins doesn't want your money on him.
I think DeAndre Hopkins is fantastic.
That's not what you said.
I think he's a fantastic.
What's more likely to happen come the end of the season? Is DeAndre Hopkins more likely to be a top 5 wide receiver, or is Tennessee more likely to be a top 5 defense? What's more likely?
Well, at this point,
what's more likely to happen?
I don't know. More likely?
Yeah. What's more likely?
Is
DeAndre Hopkins be a top 5 receiver. Thank you.
It's hard for me to put that much money on him, being that the state of the offense of the Texans is so bad. He's the only guy.
That hasn't changed. They've been bad all year.
The coach of the Titans defense is Dick LeBeau, who's one of the most experienced guys in the league. You think he's just going to let DeAndre Hopkins run free?
Experienced guy in the league just means he's the oldest guy in the league. That's all that means. Come on. Now,
he didn't let Julio Jones run all over him.
DeAndre Hopkins is a better receiver than Julio Jones. And Tennessee's defense, it's not a defensive juggernaut. I mean, come on. This is not the Denver Broncos defense we're talking about. This is Tennessee.
Tennessee. Yeah, a little Arrested Development.
You went old. So
it's too much money for me. And, you know, I don't want to sound anti-DeAndre, but it's just too much money for me. And the state of this Texans offense is just putrid.
Leading wide receiver in the NFL.
Let's see. Well, I'm also a little bitter because I played them last week. Let's see.
Did you bite a bit of bitter butter?
I did. I bit a bed of bitter batter.
And who else you got?
I'm sure you're going to be on board for whoever I pick next. And that is, and continuing my theme of low-end players, you know, some people just like to be like, oh, I like Julio Jones, I like DeAndre Hopkins, I like the best players ever. But you know, I'm gonna go on a limb here and try to give you some value plays. You know, anybody can pick the guy that's right at the top. Like, hit that button, the first guy I see. Now, I'm going to give you a guy you got to really scrounge for, and that's Tyler Lockett. Yeah, get your yucks. Save your yucks for after I'm finished. Tyler Lockett. If you watched the Thursday game, once again, get a life. But last week, Tyler Lockett had his breakout game as a wide receiver. He had 5 targets with 5 catches, and one of those was a bomb touchdown from Russell Wilson. Yes, I know Russell Wilson can throw bomb touchdowns. It's rare, but it happens. And Tyler Lockett was a 3rd-round draft pick for them. They traded to get this pick for him specifically. They don't have a true slot receiver threat. They did trade for Jimmy Graham. He has underperformed the whole year. Part of that is because the Seahawks line has been in flux. They've had injuries. They've traded some of their players. One of the players, actually, they traded Unger to the Saints for Jimmy Graham. So Jimmy Graham's actually had to been in pass a lot. We know Seattle loves to run the ball. However, they do have to throw it sometimes. Tyler Lockett has been a recipient of a lot of these passes recently and is getting each week more and more involved. And he was involved in 41 of 72 snaps last week. And if you don't know anything about Tyler Lockett, if you didn't watch the game before, he is electric. He is their kick and punt returner. He is extremely fast. And in leagues, actually I don't know if FanDuel gives you kick return touchdowns. They do. I played Tyler Lockett 1 week in DraftKings, and so I know because he ran one back for a touchdown. He actually has 2 returns this year already for touchdowns. So that's another way that he can score for you, and also for Seattle defense. We might get into that later. Tyler Lockett, as he becomes more involved, I'm hoping that he'll be involved more in the screen game too because of his kick returner nature. This is how not saying he's Antonio Brown, it's how Antonio Brown got a start. He was a kick returner, started doing them in screens, he started to break things. We're like, hey, maybe we'll throw to this guy more. And he became one of the best wide receivers. He's no DeAndre Hopkins, but one of the best wide receivers in the league.
Nobody is.
Dallas is a team that unfortunately can't wait for Romo and Des Bryant to get back. We saw Castle throw 3 picks last week. He single-handedly won and lost that game, ultimately losing that game. I just see a situation where Dallas really focuses, Seattle's on the road, see Dallas focusing on stopping Marshawn Lynch, who is their number one weapon, and we're going to see Russell Wilson throwing the ball a little bit more. And as Tyler Lockett succeeds and gets more targets every week, I think for his literally bottom barrel price of $3,000 in DraftKings and then low price of $5,300 in FanDuel, I think he's a good value.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like you to do something for me. I would like you to go back right now. I'll wait and go click on last week's Thursday segment for me. I'll wait. Go ahead. Are you done? Awesome. So last week, the Thursday segment we did, my co-host on the left side of the couch here has been touting Tyler Lockett all season. And he failed to mention Tyler Lockett last week, and I, in that segment, said, what, no Tyler Lockett? And you said, no Tyler Lockett this week. I like him, but not this week. So this is a blatant example of chasing last week's stats, which is fantasy faux pas number 2. So no, you're hoping...
Never get involved in a land war in Asia.
You're hoping for a punt return touchdown. You're hoping for a kick return touchdown. No, thank you. I hope you find another wide receiver.
That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying
That's exactly what you said.
Is he's getting enough targets now to allow you to play him, and then on top of that, he is also the kick and punt returner, and he has 2 touchdowns already. So there's always a threat that he can get the touchdown there, and now he is a threat in the passing game. And last week, in the Seattle passing game, is an oxymoron. Even though I wasn't super high on him on our show, I did play him in a Thursday league, and I won a good amount of money on them. Disingenuous to our audience. No, not at all. Fantasy faux pas number 3. And I played him because I like him, and I liked him. I have liked him this year. He was great. It's getting there. We'll see how well he does this week. But yeah, and there's not any. He's just a flashy player. I'd say electric, and they really don't have that in Seattle in their receiving core. So
because that's not their offense. No, thank you. No Seattle wide receivers ever.
I'm sure you have some under the radar wide receiver that you could throw at us now for your segment, right?
I have an amazing value play for my loyal listeners and watchers and viewers. I have A.J. Green of the Cincinnati Bengals.
Is he a rookie or somebody that we should be...
You're going to hear some things from this guy. Write his name down.
Yeah, I got
A.J.
How do you spell A.J.?
All right, Jim Bob. So they are playing at Pittsburgh this week. This is a pure hunch play. I know it's not a great thing calling for A.J. Green a hunch, but he's only topped 100 yards once this season. That's why this is a good value play. And when the last time he did top 100 yards, he actually went for 227 with 2 touchdowns, and that was in week 3. Cincinnati's spreading the ball around. That's the only reason that A.J. Green is not the A.J. Green that we're used to. There's a lot of Marvin Jones being involved in the offense because he's finally healthy. A lot of Eifert this year. But A.J. Green can only go so many games without popping off the stat sheet. He always does very well in divisional games, and Pittsburgh has given up the 11th most fantasy points to wide receivers this season. So for the price, not the most expensive, he's not the least expensive, but $7,600 on DraftKings, $8,200 on FanDuel. I think this is his second 100-yard game of the season, and I'll throw a touchdown in there just for shits and giggles.
Wow, Joel, just giving us just hidden gems and jewels that nobody could have ever thought of.
Was I wrong about any of my wide receiver calls last week? One of them? Not one of them. Was I wrong?
You did well. You did well.
So
I'll give you that. That's fine.
So let's.
I was good on my tight ends and running back.
Ladies and gentlemen, would you rather AJ Green or Tyler Lockett? The choice is yours.
Or, I would hope you would do, play a high end like AJ Green and play a low end like Tyler Lockett.
Or you can play a Ronnie Hillman and then you can get a DeAndre Hopkins and an AJ Green in your lineup.
All right, well, I'm going to give you a little bonus coverage here on burnt coverage.
Bonus burnt.
Burnt bonus.
Extra burnt.
Bonus,
extra burnt.
Extra burnt coverage. Thank you, Joel. Extra burnt coverage here. And yeah, I think Cincinnati Bengals could do some damage in the passing game with Marvin Jones. Marvin Jones, 4,200, so a little cheaper than AJ Green in DraftKings, and 5,400 in FanDuel against that same 28th ranked pass defense for Pittsburgh. The attention is going to be on AJ Green. That's why AJ Green hasn't got 100 yards, because they're like, well, we got to stop AJ Green, right? So what has that meant? It's meant that Marvin Jones has done well. He's had 3 passes over 400 yards this year. He has 3 touchdowns already. He's missed a little time, but he still has 3 touchdowns. He is a long ball threat in his own right. He had 9 receptions last week, and he's had at least 5 receptions 3 of the last 4 weeks. And he also, if you remember this far back, he did miss last year due to an injury, but the year before that, he had 10 touchdowns. So this is a guy who Andy Dalton trusts. Andy Dalton's better now, and consistently now Marvin Jones has been producing for a much cheaper price. So I feel a little bit more comfortable playing Marvin Jones than the guy who's supposed to be a stud who hasn't got 100 yards.
Well, he does. He has 100-yard games, if you were listening.
He has one 100-yard game.
Yes, but
so does Nate Washington.
If they
or he has 2, I'm sorry. Nate Washington has 2.
If they were playing a better defense, I might be a little more hesitant. But the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, while they have improved over the last 3 weeks, they are still not a great defense. They are not a Pittsburgh Steelers defense. You mentioned don't chase name defenses like you have in the past with San Francisco 49ers, for example. This is not a Steelers defense. This is a Steelers offensive team now. But no, AJ Green, he's going to go off this week.
They throw to too many guys now. They have Marvin Jones, they still have Sanu. Eifert has emerged this year. Eifert has actually emerged this year. He's one of the top. He has one of the top numbers in reception touchdowns this year.
Eifert's been amazing this year. Yes.
So it's been that much money on AJ Green.
Do you really what is more likely to happen? Do you think that AJ Green is going to go 4 games in a row without a mind-blowing performance, without the lead catch on SportsCenter, or do you think that Marvin Jones is going to catch 2 touchdowns? Who's more likely to happen?
Who's the best receiver in Cincinnati? It's AJ Green.
Yes.
But all defenses know that too. It's the same DeAndre Hopkins.
But if a defense knows it, doesn't matter if they're not a good defense.
I just want you to be more inspired for our viewers than picking teams or picking players that you know defenses.
I'm giving you the best plays of the week. I want them to win money. I want to win money. I don't want to play with Tyler Lockett.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it all shakes out. But
so I bet that AJ Green has more receiving yards than Tyler Lockett this week.
AJ Green's a phenomenal talent. It's just that's why they're gonna cover him. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
We'll see. You gonna outro out here?
Sure. So that's another segment of Burn Coverage, Week 8 Wide Receiver Edition. I am your host, Joel.
Wide receiver guru Curtis.
Just because you say it doesn't mean it's true. Stay tuned for another segment. Otherwise, we'll see you next week on the couch.
See you.